Downtowns are supposed to be the heart of the city, and while everyone wants a safe and vibrant downtown, not everyone agrees on what would improve things. Today we're bringing you voices from downtown Saskatoon, Regina, and Prince Albert. We'll hear from people who work on the front lines of addiction and homelessness and people representing downtown businesses. We want to hear from you. Is crime and downtown vibrancy an election issue in your community right now? Join the conversation by calling us 1-800-716-2221. That's 1-800-716-2221. Or email us at bluesky@cbc.ca. As cities across Saskatchewan gear up for civic elections, several issues stand out, one of which has been crime and safety. It's a concern that's being felt not just in campaign speeches, but in the daily lives of residents. To take a closer look, Saskatoon Mornings' Candice Lipsky joined crime reporter Dan Zakreski for a walk through downtown, an area where the conversation about crime feels particularly urgent.
If you've been downtown lately, you might have seen some things that alarmed you, made you uncomfortable, or even made you think about your own safety. Things like open drug use.
One of the things that I've seen and really became aware of, and I don't think anyone can overstate this, is the impact that crystal meth has had on our city. I think, over the years, I sort of have always said jokingly that with crystal meth, we finally got the drug that the cops have been warning us about. For decades, it was cocaine was going to be the scourge, marijuana was going to be the scourge, LSD, bath salts, whatever. Well, by gosh, with crystal meth, we got it. And it really has changed the city.
And it's not just drug use. Violence happens here, too. We're standing on the intersection of 4th and 21st. There's the Bez in one direction, Midtown Plaza in the other.
This past April of 2024, I remember vividly coming out of the office. I'd come back downtown around 4 to work out, and I came out, and you could hear the sirens down by the Midtown, the whoop, 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 whoop. And of course, I went to look, and as I was walking up the street, people were coming towards me, and they were ashen-faced. And it was clearly something bad had happened. And when I got to the intersection at 2nd Avenue, there had been a stabbing in broad daylight. And this was the one that sort of kicked off the 2024 violence season.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, it was really shook up a lot of people. And what I really remember was the impact on the people who work down here. Mm-hmm. Because I came back the next day and was talking to people at that corner, and they were describing at 4 in the afternoon on a weekday, locking themselves in their businesses and looking out the window and watching cops run around and people with knives. And you talk to people, they talk about, the line from police, and it's not an incorrect line, but their fallback line is always, if you're not involved in criminal activity, you're really not going to get in trouble in Saskatoon. Like when you hear about the murders, there's not a lot of whodunits. It's people who are involved and they know each other.
Dan says there's a flip side to that, though. He says you don't want to be in what he calls the blast zone.
Sure, there's trouble happening. Well, if bullets start flying or if bear spray is deployed, it doesn't ask for ID. So you're downtown in a place that can be really kind of alarming.
Bear spray is a problem here. Police say through October, there's been an average of nearly 1 bear spray incident per day. Walking through downtown on a beautiful day, though, there's no shortage of places that Dan associates with crime.
There's just such a strange history to the downtown if you follow the stories. Like we are walking right now on 3rd Avenue, heading towards the river. We're at the Avenue building. Again, this is an iconic old building.
Yeah.
This, right next door to the Avenue building, is where Candice Singbell was last seen. That's one of our outstanding missing women cases. It happened right here. The police were releasing video of her bike was missing. They saw people in this alley. So this is where things happen that, you walk around and you just think, oh, it's a great little retail area, but there's a history of stuff that goes on here.
As you'd probably expect, crime in this city fluctuates. We've already seen more than 10 homicides this year, and you might remember a violent week back in April when there were 2 murders, 70 assaults, 5 aggravated assaults, and a woman forcibly confined in a basement. This year so far, violent crimes are up more than 8% since last year, according to police data from September. Property crime, on the other hand, is actually down for 2024. In the latest crime severity report that came out this summer, based on 2023 data, Saskatoon ranked 8th out of 41 cities on the index, meaning it has one of the highest crime severity rates in the country. Now, that was actually an improvement from 2022. All those statistics, though, are real people, and all those situations have some form of collateral, such as family or witnesses. I asked Dan what he hears from people who work or come downtown, and he tells me a lot of people worry about open drug use.
This is a phenomena of just the past couple of years, is the absolute open and blatant drug use on the streets that we never saw in the past. And I don't mean people walking around smoking joints. You can't blame it on legalization of marijuana, even though you do see people doing that. It's people sitting in these corners, and you come out, like I always check alleys. Like I don't walk blind past alleys because there's people there. The downtown people are concerned about groups of people sitting around smoking meth pipes in public.
I wasn't able to find any statistics on open drug use in the city, but anecdotally, you don't have to walk far in downtown to see it with your own eyes. We walk past shops that have installed huge roll-up metal doors to prevent people from sleeping in doorways and to protect their businesses from theft or damage. And Dan says it's not just downtown. The whole city is different than it was even just 5 years ago.
I think you have to begin with at least an acknowledgement that there is an issue here. What can I do as a citizen? Should I be arguing for more police, or should I be contacting my MLA and say we need more help for the unhoused, we need social services, we have to help people? And then it just gets broader and broader because it's a federal issue as well.
When it comes to crime and safety, it's tough to know as a voter whose job it is to deal with what. While the city controls the police budget, it's the province's Ministry of Social Services' job to support vulnerable people. Meanwhile, organizations in the city, such as the group Straight Up and the Elizabeth Fry Society that help youth and adults within the criminal justice system, they need financial support too. Regardless, my conversation with Dan isn't leaving me feeling too optimistic. But Dan doesn't necessarily see it that way.
It's a beautiful morning in a beautiful city. And, I think we can, if we all start pulling in the same direction, we have a chance to work our way out of this. But I think it has to start with the honest appraisal of what's happening. And I think it's unfair to say it's a hood issue, because it is such a beautiful place and it should be beautiful for everyone.
For CBC Radio, I'm Candice Lipsky.
That was CBC's Candice Lipsky speaking with CBC's crime and courts reporter Dan Zakreski, who's reported in Saskatoon for many years. If you have thoughts on what you just heard, call us 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. And we have an email here from Donna that I'm going to read. I'm only go downtown, she's in Saskatoon, when I absolutely need to. When I do go, all you see are empty streets with people addicted to drugs, people who are drunk, and the homeless, either asking for money, injecting drugs, or sleeping in doorways. It is so bad that the mail is no longer delivered in certain areas. If the city wants more people to live downtown, the area will need to be cleaned up. Thank you, Donna, for your email. Well, Candice just took us on a walk through downtown Saskatoon, as you heard, but it could have been Regina or any number of other provincial major centers, and that includes in Saskatchewan and Prince Albert. Recently, when the Prince Albert Chamber of Commerce held a mayoral forum, the topic of crime emerged as one of the top issues. Patty Hughes is the Chief Executive Officer of the Prince Albert and District Chamber of Commerce. She's been listening to the show and joins us now. Hi, Patty.
Good afternoon.
Patty, you just heard that piece from Candice and Dan. What were your thoughts listening to them describe downtown Saskatoon?
Well, it's absolutely correct. The police had warned us about crystal meth and this is the drug, right? And it has made a significant impact on our communities and in our downtown cores, right? Because there's a lot in our downtown cores, there's a lot more areas for these people to find space to do these kind of activities. And it's unfortunate because what it's leaving is it's on the doorsteps of our small businesses, right? And our small businesses rely on a lot of casual foot traffic. And, not only do the employees have to feel safe, but the people that are coming to the business have to feel safe. And so businesses are making significant investments into their properties, adding security, that kind of thing. And those all come down off of the bottom line, right? And it's so as a business aspect of it, it's costing a lot of money.
We mentioned the mayoral forum that you helped organize in Prince Albert. How did you decide on what would be discussed?
So earlier this summer, we put out a survey to our chamber membership just to ask them what the topics that they would like to see addressed at the forum that was coming up here in October. And this was kind of over the months of June, July, August, and September. And the information that came back, of course, was, you see the regular things about wasteful spending, enhancing public services, lowering the commercial taxes, infrastructure improvements, right? But what came out top were two things: crime and homelessness, and mental health and addictions, right? We've got to separate those out to make sure that we're really addressing the root cause of all of those things. But crime was significant because, again, it does erode into the margins of the businesses and their success.
You mentioned there, crime emerging, homelessness emerging as the top issues. What sort of feedback, how has this been addressed by, candidates not only for mayor, but also council in Prince Albert?
We have been advocating for this for some time with the our local municipal level. They have been advocating it as well, because this is, it has to be a multi-pronged approach. It's all levels, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal government. And we saw it addressed in the provincial election. The current government addressed it with just prior to the writ being dropped, talking about the, in Prince Albert, we have 17 new officers, right? Well, the struggle is still going to be is to find those 17 officers, because another issue that are, is labor market and the skill set and that kind of thing, and finding them. But, the provincial government is saying we're going to invest and we're going to try to help you all across this province, not just in certain markets and that kind of thing, but to address it. It's just not Prince Albert. It's just not Saskatoon, Regina. It's North Battleford. It's Moose Jaw. It's Swift Current. It's Estevan. And it's all across that we need to be looking at this. So our provincial government has heard these concerns, and they looked at it and said, okay, we're going to try to give you the infrastructure that we can do to help support it. Again, mental health and addictions is another approach that we need to be part of this as well. And in our leadership forum that we had at the on October 30th, the mayor and the candidates addressed it and said, yes, we need to be looking at this and working with all stakeholders involved to be addressing this issue.
We want people to join the conversation. You can call us 1-800-716-2221. Anywhere in the province you have thoughts on this. If you've been in some of the major centers, like where Patty is in Prince Albert, or Saskatoon or Regina, or any of the other communities. Patty mentioned North Battleford, Estevan, other places. What are you seeing where you are? Patty, I want to know what has been done to downtown in Prince Albert to make people feel safe if they are seeing, crime, or they're seeing homelessness, and the police are trying to address that, or different organizations are trying to address that and do that every day. What are businesses? What are the people, the chamber doing to try and bring people to downtown?
Well, I would have to commend our Prince Albert Downtown Business Improvement District. They're a part here, and they really lobbied hard with our municipal level government to add additional funding for security. And so this summer we had security on foot that helped address a lot of these concerns that, necessarily sometimes you would call our police to it, but they're busy doing some other calls. But yet the security that they employed just walked around downtown, taking a look at where, some of these corridors that people were, hiding in and stuff like that, and getting them to the services that they needed. And so we saw a big improvement here in Prince Albert, just having that security walking around for the summer months. And I'm really happy that our city had invested in supporting that, because it did help on the resources for our police to be able to address some other larger concerns that were also happening in our community, right? And this maybe got some of those grassroots things stopped before they escalated to any further as well. And so those really helped our small businesses, right? Because when you take a look at it, businesses that may not necessarily be in the downtown, they're in some other shopping areas, and you see it, like you'll see your Tim Hortons or some of your fast food in retail locations, and they have security out front. And that costs those businesses a lot of money. And typically just one location to have security on there is $120,000. Well, that means a lot of cups of coffee, a lot of French fries, a lot of hamburgers have to be sold to, make sure that you're covering those costs. And, safety for your employees are provided that way. But when you look at it as a business decision, that means you can't hire 2 more employees. And because you're covering it off with a security guard. So business growth sometimes is hampered by it, for sure.
Patty, when it comes to, and you mentioned this as well, all around supports for people that are struggling, people that are struggling with homelessness, or people that, may come out of custody and they need a place to work, or they need a handout to help them just for a short time. What's in place in Prince Albert? Is there enough in place in the community right now? Do we need more investment in that area in the community? What are you seeing there?
We're seeing, a mindset change, and that's a big thing, right? We've had a lot of transitioning, right? And people understanding to maybe work with some of these agencies that are out there. Building those relationships with those stakeholders is really important. But yeah, I think we do need to invest a little more money into that and letting employers know and support them in trying to hire some of these people that are trying to transition. Because once you give some of these people that, that hope and ability to know that there's a life out there for them beyond what they were previously involved with, they want it, right? And we just need to continue to be working with them and transitioning. And that's part of the multi-prong approach that I had mentioned earlier.
As we get into the colder months here, and I know this has come up, I'm sure it's happening in Prince Albert. I see it in Regina and Saskatoon with people, trying to find a place to stay. Encampments have popped up in different parts of the country. What's being done in the community, and is there enough support for people that are housing insecure as the winter gets closer here?
Unfortunately, there isn't. We're a struggle, just like in Saskatoon and Regina, where you're hearing about the shelter. The province has stepped up, and I commend them for that in saying that they will fund these shelters, but they're leaving it up to the communities where to decide to put them and making what's best serving the needs of the people, right? And that's where the struggle is coming in, is nobody wants that in their backyard. And there's a lot of fear and stigma that's around it. I think it's important that we really have to take a look at the agencies that are operating them and have the confidence in them and supporting them from the business community as well, because we know it will make an impact of what's on our doorstep. And so we have to kind of take a look at and support them in making sure that we are addressing that and giving them a place to be, because it will make a difference on the doorsteps of our businesses, for sure.
You mentioned support. What does that support look like to you?
Like I said, it's that understanding, and sometimes these people, it's the mental health and addictions part of it. It's the providing some of these people an opportunity to transition them to housing. It's giving them an opportunity to work. It's also financial support. A lot of even though the province is saying that we are, funding a shelter and that kind of thing, a lot of these agencies still need additional funding, and they rely on the business community to support them. And they do get a lot of corporate support. And it's giving that treasure as well, and understanding and talent.
Yeah, sometimes it's a difference between operational funding versus, putting up a building. That is sometimes a delicate dance, I know, covering the provincial legislature. We're going to take a look at Regina. We have an email here from Ken. A reminder, if you want to get involved in the conversation, give us a call, 1-800-716-2221, or email us at bluesky@cbc.ca. We're talking crime, downtown vibrancy, homelessness as civic election issues in the province. And it doesn't matter where you live. Let us know what you think. Ken says, recently Regina Regina Transit moved some of their time stop locations where buses sit idle for 5 to 10 minutes. They are primarily for eastbound buses. It's now located on Lawrence Street, away from office buildings and retail stores. This new location is isolated and creates an unsafe environment. But bus passengers will now have to walk 2 to 3 blocks to get anywhere. Before, the time stop was across from the Cornwall Centre and approximal to many office buildings. With the current municipal election, mayoralty and councillor candidates spoke on safety and downtown renewal. This move by Regina Transit seems to be working at cross purposes with the idea of renewal and safety. I've heard merchants don't like the bus patrons loitering in their shops as they wait for buses, especially in the cold weather. Maybe we might need interdisciplinary teams to make up different departments of the city working together on these ideas of renewal and safety in the downtown area, so you don't have departments working in silos, resulting in dysfunction. Ken, thank you for your email. Rob Crozier leads the Regina Street team. His job gives him a front row seat to issues affecting downtown Regina and adjacent neighborhoods. I caught up with him earlier and asked him to explain the work of the Regina Street team.
Right now, there's 13 of us. We have some practicum students as well. So we operate Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. And we work with the hardest to house, people on the street, anybody experiencing mental health crisis, a lot of addiction crisis, opioid response, stuff like that. So basically we work to connect people with other services where doors might be not accessible to them, or doors have been closed or hard to get to and navigate the system, and we bridge that pathway for them to make things easier for them and help them get through the stuff that they need to get through to just to live better or as well as they can.
How have things evolved over the last number of months?
Encampments are growing. That's quite evident, I believe, for everybody. You're seeing more and more of it. We're really seeing it concentrated in 2 different areas, which is North Central and the Heritage neighborhood, like 11th, 12th Avenue. And then North Central has encampments littered all over the community. Those ones are a little more hidden. So, but in Heritage, if you go down 11th or 12th, you'll see like a large number of people walking around, and tent encampments are a little more visible. So we've seen a lot of that. But the housing crisis is really what, I don't even like calling it the housing crisis because it's so overused. There's nowhere for people to go. So we don't have enough shelter space. And even with the people that are trying and being able to get the permanent shelter spot, those things are wonderful. But they're not new shelter numbers. They're not more beds, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So we're really seeing that. We need more supportive living houses and spaces and more access to different treatment, both cultural and the westernized ones for the people that want it, but just less wait times and more access to these things. But housing is the number one that goes kind of alongside with addictions and mental health.
We're talking about crime and public safety as part of the civic election campaign. What do you make about how this issue has been talked about? So I've learned to my mind's been changed on it. That's probably thanks to my wife always giving me heck for it. But I used to kind of sway under the well, it's not uncomfortable for me, so I don't know why people are so worried. But given that, I chose to work in this. So in what I'm doing, so it's a lot different for me than just for the average person that's walking in an area and feels unsafe or sees somebody that they're not. Do you know what I mean? Mm. So I'm a lot more empathetic towards it now, where I realize that not everybody is used to it, and nor should they really have to be, I guess, is a good way to say it. If somebody just wants to go shopping, that's what they want to go do. They don't want to deal with a whole bunch of other stuff. But that's such as life, though, too. I don't personally believe that, more enforcement is necessarily the way to go, because all we're doing is institutionalizing people and putting them in jail, and then they have no access to housing and stuff when they come out. They're also more vulnerable to overdoses after not using for a while and coming back out. So we basically play a shell game, a game of cat and mouse with people getting arrested, going away. We lose track of them and all the progress we've made.
and then trying to pick it back up when they just randomly get dropped off back in the city. So it's tiring. So the safety concerns are very valid for a lot of people, and I understand that with businesses, but I think a lot of the stuff is police matters more of, like for the criminal stuff, we don't do removal or enforcement at all. So for us, we're there to help people and do stuff, whereas a lot of the stuff that happens like in businesses is probably more prone to be a police phone call than to us.
And I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned Heritage and North Central, which aren't downtown specific, kind of adjacent to downtown. But in your mind, what would make downtown Regina safer? And there's been lots of talk in this campaign about making downtown more vibrant. How do you see that?
So for me, like making it more vibrant, I don't know. Do we put up more lights? Like, I don't know. I don't really know. Like, I don't get to see a lot of the vibrancy parts because of the, like the devastation and the harder stuff that we deal with. So, that concept to me is a little different than what our focus is, for what we work with people. But, I was discussing this with my work partner earlier today, and we both kind of agree the same thing. Like, so the areas that surround downtown this is where people crisscross through. Like, downtown's the center, so they go across. So, like, unless we have supportive housing and we have more housing, more spots available, services that are properly funded to support people that are around the downtown area and in it, that's when I think you'll see that things start to get a little better. Right now, it's just kind of like Heritage has quite a few supports in it there, whereas North Central, the services are a little few and farther between. So when they crisscross downtown, until we can have more supports that are able to help people and get them to where they need to be and do stuff, I think that's like a key component in the downtown vibrancy. And people wanting to go downtown is when it's not seen as like a fearful place. I also think that the media has a lot to do with, and media and like Facebook and stuff like that was kind of villainizing what's happening in downtown and like the other areas. We only get to see the bad stuff, like the really bad stuff, and it's when you're looking at it on a screen every day, it seems like it's happening all the time, but there's a lot of great things that are happening in all those areas too that kind of get overshadowed by Instagram pages and posts and stuff like that. I don't want to say fear mongering, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Rob, really appreciate your time today and sharing your story with us, and best of luck with the street team.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having us, and I look forward to talking to you again.
That's Rob Crozier with the City of Regina Street Team. If you want to get involved in our conversation today, give us a call, 1-800-716-2221, or you can email us at bluesky@cbc.ca. You heard Rob there mention Regina Police, and the Regina Police are taking some new measures to address crime in downtown Regina and those adjacent neighborhoods. Right now, there are 7 new alternative response officers being trained right now by the RPS. Laura Davies is the Deputy Chief of the Regina Police Service, and she's been listening and is on the line. Hi there, Deputy Chief.
Good afternoon, Adam.
Deputy Chief Davies, tell us about these AROs, or alternative response officers. For people that aren't familiar, what will they be doing?
Right. So they are really, I would say, another layer of visibility in downtown Regina. And so they have a number of focuses. One is obviously connecting with vulnerable people in the downtown, providing connection to services for them. They are just that visible presence in downtown. And so we hope that that increases the perceptions and feelings of safety downtown. Take reports. They could attend to traffic accidents. But I would say probably the biggest thing is that additional presence in the downtown.
Has this been done other places? Is something that you used as a model to set up this unit here in Regina?
Yeah, absolutely. So a number of us were up in Saskatoon a few times to sort of understand their program that they have up there. The Saskatoon Police Service have had AROs for a number of years now, and so we did model a lot of what we're doing on the success that they've had with their program. I know they started small and they've had success in expanding their AR program in Saskatoon.
What kind of training, you mentioned what the officers will be doing, what kind of training do they get to understand that's happening at the moment?
For sure. So they all had 5 weeks of in-house training, and that training is set up by the province in terms of what needs to be included in there. It was approved by the province. So powers of arrest, understanding mental health. So really a large number of things in terms of the 5 weeks that they're in the classroom. And then they'll spend 8 weeks with a field training officer. So they are out walking downtown, interacting with people, really being a visible presence, and they'll be in that training mode until December 9th. So they've just been out in the community for about 3 weeks now.
And is this coming through funding from the province, through city taxpayers? How does that work?
Right. So the province and the city are working together in terms of funding this initiative. And so our Board of Police Commissioners was very supportive of us going down this road. And so we had their endorsement. And then the city did come through, or sorry, the province came through with funding as well, underneath sort of the provincial approach to homelessness.
There's, been this, phrase, I'm sure you've heard it, we can't police our way out of crime. This investment in this street team, how do you think this is going to impact either perceptions downtown or overall reduction of crime?
For sure. Well, I know, like I said, we've only had 3 weeks under our belt, but the initial responses from businesses, from community members is really an increased feeling of safety downtown. We have 7, so they're not a huge number, but they're energetic. They're putting in lots of miles, which is great. But I think number 1 is just that visibility. And number 2, I think our downtown, like many others, as Patty has indicated as well, we have a lot of people with complex needs. And so for us, it's really been that connection to services for folks, being able to find them a warm place to go, point them in the direction of a warm meal. And I think those relationships are starting to form. And so, I think that is the essence of community policing and how policing should be, is that, we know the folks that are maybe having a tough time downtown on a first name basis, where we know their story. We're able to interact with them with empathy and respect and hook them up to services. And we do work really closely with Rob's downtown street team as well. And so they're invaluable resource for us in terms of them making those connections to services as well.
I wanted to just get your thoughts on what Rob said about the sort of downtown adjacent neighborhoods. And I don't know what you consider downtown, but Heritage, which is near the police station, or, even Cathedral, where you'd have people nearby downtown, North Central on the other side. Is this something that we're seeing, spillover of issues, people that are dealing with addictions, dealing with homelessness, as Rob described? Is that something that you're seeing in the city?
Absolutely. We've had meetings with a number of community associations. I would say most notably Cathedral, very adjacent to our downtown, that have had seen, sort of a lot more vulnerable populations in areas where maybe they hadn't been seen in the past, some more of those sort of minor mischiefs, minor thefts. And so we've had really good conversation with those community associations about things people can do, in terms of reporting, making your properties safe. But, I think that our city is very similar to many others, and that unfortunately we don't have all the resources we need to be able to support people who may have addictions or mental health needs. And yes, I would agree that spillover into neighboring areas has definitely occurred, and we're trying to be proactive, I guess, in terms of providing additional presence in those areas, working with those community associations to help come up with solutions. I agree. Police cannot be the answer to all of those issues, but certainly we are happy to sit at any table and have those conversations in order to figure out what the path forward looks like.
Deputy Chief Davies, thanks so much for listening and then joining us and giving us the scoop on the alternative response team and what the RPS are doing. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a great conversation.
You're very welcome. That's Lauralee Davies, the Deputy Chief of the Regina Police Service. Time now to get to some callers. Florence in Regina has been waiting patiently on the line. Hi there, Florence.
Hi there. Thanks for letting me in. I'm concerned about the weaponization of the language of safety. It's not me or those of us who are housed who are unsafe. We have a roof over our head and food on the table. It is unhoused people who are in danger. I don't know how many people know that the life expectancy of an unhoused person in Canada is 48 years, and that's decades shorter than the rest of us. I'm a woman in my 80s. I'm frequently downtown. When I encounter who I assume to be an unhoused person, I stop and chat with them. I've never, ever felt threatened at all. And I've also volunteered regularly at Pepsi Park over the spring and summer, and I was never afraid for myself, but I was very afraid for the unhoused. Where would they go that night when we had all left Pepsi Park? So what needs to be done? I mean, all levels of government, including the municipal, need to work together to end homelessness.
Florence, thanks so much for your perspective and your call today. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
And we have Loretta on the line in Saskatoon. Hi, Loretta.
Good, great. Hi. Yeah, I double up on what Florence said there. Historically, we've been colonized to by way of classism. So this is a class issue. Undesirables, they were called white garbage refuse in England that settled Canada and United States. We have a history of not wanting to look at who is left behind, at who is not housed. So to add to Florence, typically words like marginalized, vulnerable populations, I want that changed to strategically undervalued populations, because it's a strategy. It's a strategy that we all take to make sure we don't have to look at what's going on with our neighbors, our relations, our people. So this is a class issue, and to me, we keep voting classism in because we don't want to look, and we don't want to risk the vulnerability of knowing that we have more and it costs other people their lives.
Loretta, thanks so much for your call and joining the conversation today. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So we heard from Candice Lipsky a little earlier in the show, or conversation with Dan Zakreski. Candice took a look at what's happening with the mayoral candidates, and we've told you that crime and safety are front and center in the municipal election. In fact, it's mentioned on the platforms of every single mayoral candidate in Saskatoon in one way or another. Candice spoke with Saskatoon Morning host Stephanie Massicott about how mayoral candidates are framing crime in the city.
Hey, Steph.
What are some of the candidates saying about crime and safety?
Well, for Gordon Wyant, a former Sask Party MLA, it's pretty front and center. On his website, his policy page talks about crime and safety pretty much right off the bat. It says the city has been heading in the wrong direction in terms of high crime, and goes on to say he'd improve safety through enhancing, quote, police, fire, and emergency services while investing in community-based safety solutions to ensure every neighborhood feels secure. Safety is also mentioned as a priority of Cynthia Blocks. On her site, she has a page dedicated to safety, saying the city is facing complex challenges, which is giving rise to more violent and organized crime. It says more police resources are required, along with strategies to embed community safety into neighborhoods.
Okay, so clearly important to those two. What about the others?
So Don Atchison actually stopped by the office for an interview when he first announced his campaign and hand-delivered his policy thoughts to us, but you can also find it on his website. Under the heading Law and Order First, he says that he'll, quote, restore safety and security across Saskatoon. He says law enforcement needs to be fully supported while taking a compassionate approach to justice. Another candidate, Kerry Tarasoff, his website and platform don't necessarily directly talk about crime or safety stuff, but he has a few pages that are kind of tied to it. For example, he has some thoughts about alternative response officers who fall under the Saskatoon Police. The officers patrol downtown and Riversdale and help people with community engagement, enforcement, and assist in investigations. So Tarasoff says they are limited in their abilities and wants to change their employment period and payment. And he also suggests establishing a warrant squad.
And last but not least, Mike Harder.
Right. So this is probably the least straightforward of the 5 candidates on this topic. He has 4 main policy plans, and for each he's written papers serving as official political platforms. One of these is on the housing crisis in Saskatoon, and that's the paper where he talks a bit about crime and safety, mostly looking at crime in Confederation and Fairhaven. He talks about needing adequate addictions, mental health, and income assistance programs.
Okay, so those are our 5 mayoral candidates. What does the outgoing mayor have to say?
I was curious to hear Mayor Charlie Clark's thoughts on crime and safety as a municipal issue as well, especially because when I talked to him a few months ago on the show, I really remember him telling me that this is actually one of the big things that people, they just walk up to him and talk to him about it. So I asked Mayor Charlie Clark why he thinks it's top of mind for so many.
Safety and the feeling of safety that people have in a neighborhood is obviously a really big definer in terms of our quality of life. And so what we've seen, this year in particular is an increase of high-profile situations like homicides. And has been news of some of crime and particular assaults on transit and even at libraries. And so when that happens, it creates a sense of concern about people in every neighborhood. I believe still that the biggest driver of some of that activity is the way the drug trade has changed, the way that we're seeing more people having crimes of desperation to feed addictions, but also those who are trafficking drugs, getting more organized, bringing in more weapons. And so it means that we have to have the police response and the ability to try to deter that activity, but also get at some of the root causes of what's feeding the drug trade.
Again, that's Mayor Charlie Clark.
How much can the city actually do about crime and safety?
I'm really glad you asked, Steph. In some ways, a lot, and in some ways, not much. The city is responsible for the police budget, and of course, they are a big part of tackling crime. In late September, the Saskatoon Police Service asked the city for $4.1 million more in next year's budget, citing an increased need for services. Police Chief Cameron McBride told council that the city is dealing with more violence and weapons in the community. He said there's been a 126% increase in weapon calls here and a significant increase in serious assaults. So police is, of course, the big one. Council also approves the fire department's budget. This is important when it comes to safety because the fire department has really taken a lead in tracking people living in unsafe and inadequate conditions and sharing information with police to accurately kind of assess what's been happening on the streets. They've combined data on things as well like fires, derelict structures, overdoses, needle pickups, and more. Now, another way the city plays a role is in housing. The city has, in partnership with the federal government, a huge affordable housing initiative under the Housing Accelerator Fund, which we've talked about a lot here on the show. It's aiming to get a lot of affordable housing built in our city. Why am I mentioning this, you ask? Well, if you talk to experts, they'll say housing insecurity is one of the many factors that can contribute to crime. So housing is a part of this conversation as well. I put this question to the mayor, though, as well, of what can the city really do? Here's what he told me.
We are responsible for the police budget, but we can't police our way out of these issues ultimately because the police are always and generally there to call and reaction. If they can work to reduce the amount of drug trafficking and the ability for drugs to get into the city, that makes a big difference, and address some of the organized gangs and some of those things. But the city itself, we do lack the jurisdiction or the resources to address some of the issues around addictions, around mental health treatment programs, and some of those underlying factors that people have. We are doing everything we can in partnership, and I'm really, really excited about increased partnerships, for example, between fire and police to work together in a more coordinated way with community service providers to be more proactive, and also having some of the resources like the expansion of our policing crisis teams that can go out there and de-escalate situations, but also help connect people to care better and not have something, before it escalates into a situation of violence. Those things can make a real difference.
That phrase that Mayor Charlie Clark says, we can't police our way out of this, is something that I've heard over and over again in the last few years, Steph, from experts to police chiefs to politicians.
That was, again, the CBC's Candice Lipsky speaking to Saskatoon Morning host Stephanie Massicott. You also heard outgoing Saskatoon Mayor Charlie Clark in that piece. interesting perspective from Charlie Clark, and we're going to go back to Patty Hughes now, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Prince Albert and District Chamber of Commerce, who's been our guest on Blue Sky today and has been patiently waiting and listening. Patty, we've heard from Laura Lee Davies, the Deputy Chief of the Police Service, Rob Crozier, who's with the street team in Regina. You heard there from outgoing Mayor Clark. Do you have thoughts, and a couple of callers as well, any common threads that people are pulling on there that stood out to you?
Really like the alternative response officers, right? And, working with the other stakeholders, we're really starting to see partnerships work in this. And I think it was mentioned earlier, we can't be silos. That was one of the emails that kind of came in. And that's the multi-prong approach. We just need all of these agencies at the table to address it because, yes, we can invest more in our police services. That's part of our infrastructure. And it's always the number one line budget here in Prince Albert. And, people can campaign on that saying we'll continue to invest more in policing, but it is more than just that, right? We do have to give the police the resources to address some of these other more difficult issues and challenges within our communities. But we also have to give them the training to be dealing with mental health, etc., and that kind of thing. So I'm really I really like to see the multi-prong approach that is coming together, and we all know that we all play a part in this.
Patty, thanks so much for your time, and you were very generous with it today and telling us what's happening in Prince Albert and some of the, I guess, things that are on the horizon there, ways you're working through this. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Great to be part of it.
You're very welcome. That's Patty Hughes, the Chief Executive Officer of the Prince Albert and District Chamber of Commerce. Our thanks to Laura Lee Davies, the Deputy Chief of the Regina Police Service, Rob Crozier, who's with the Regina Street Team. Also to our callers, thanks to Candice Lipsky and Dan Sekreski as well for their time showing us what's happening kind of behind the scenes in the city of Saskatoon. We hear from callers and emailers in Regina and Saskatoon as well. So thank you again. You're what drives our show. You bring us what's your perspective on the streets, in the cities, in the communities, all across the province. So we appreciate that.